Whoops. Alright, let's get this stream going. I will try to pick up where I left yesterday. I just been streaming on Watch Me Work for an hour and started to get rid of the line art and make it more painterly. Still not really sure what to do with the background. I'll probably leave it whitish or relatively bright. But yeah, let's see how far we will get. Well, just to give the whole thing a little bit more context, this is for an animation movie that I'm working on. It's called Colors of the Wind, and it plays in a dystopian cyberpunk future. More dystopian than cyberpunk, actually. It has a lot of post-Soviet Chernobyl vibe in it, or it's supposed to have it. And I want to figure out how to animate the characters and still maintain this hand-drawn, painterly look. So I'll probably go for a technique called camera projection mapping, where you project this hand-painted picture on a geometry that is simplified, but looks somewhat like the picture. You know, like the face could be a generic face, but since you have this painting on top, you will recognize the painting. And I want it to feel like a traditional animation with a little bit, or with a lot more complexity, since it's all painted and not cel shaded like in traditional animations. And yeah, I want to figure out the tech pipeline, because I'm not really sure which techniques I'm gonna use, how much of the camera projection mapping will be there for characters, if I should make them full 3D and slap a shader on top, or if I try to make them as flat as possible and make just puppet style animations. These are all questions I want to try to answer in the next months, and for this reason I'm setting up this scene. It's part of a storyline. This guy is a vendor slash mechanic, and he helps a little android girl to repair herself. And basically this is the first scene where he spots her, and he stands on a marketplace and sells or buys his stuff, and she approaches him. And this might not be the, you know, the final version of him, because I'm not very far with the character design. I'm not, this is most likely not final, it's just for the animation test. Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'm trying a new setup. So I hope I can read your chats properly and answer them. By the way, it's black and white just because I want to save time on the coloring process. Usually it takes, you know, a little bit more time. And this is not crucial here, it's more about the values, it's more about the lighting, how it interacts in a 3D animated scene, if I put rendered shadows on top, or if I leave the shadows hand painted, or if I paint shadows on top after the animation. So there are many technical questions that have to be answered, and yeah, for this reason I keep it black and white. Also, what I think could happen is that the character design will go into a more exaggerated direction, a little bit more toonish, a little bit more, you know, enhance the characteristics and the proportions. These are at least thoughts I'm having with it, and yeah, we'll see. It's a very character-driven story and a very character-focused story, so I think most of the details will be in the face anyway. What I really like listening to while I paint is either Neurofunk drum and bass or dark ambient music. And there is one awesome channel on YouTube, it's called Cryo Chamber, and they have the most amazing dark ambient soundtracks, which really help me out when I paint. It gives you already an atmosphere of what's going on. And to be honest, quite often I find myself being inspired by music, or having music set in place first before the artworks. I think the reason for it is when we grow up as kids in the womb, you know, we hear the heartbeat of our mother and we hear voices way earlier than we see things. So I think this, yeah, what should I say, the ear, the skill to hear things and to listen to things is developed way earlier. It's passive, you know, you can't close your ears, but you can close your eyes. And I think a musical impression is, for it to be the first one, makes a lot of sense. I just have this thought in my head. I was too modest to approach my own project because I thought, everyone who starts out wants to do their thing first, and it seems a little bit egotistical. Maybe I should get some experience first. And I was working for other people in the different companies and trying to visualize their ideas and their visions. And I was hoping to get somewhere where someone would discover my thoughts and approve of them and tell me, yeah, this is a good thing you're doing, like, let's pump it up, let's make something out of it. But of course this moment never came. It's like a pipe dream, and maybe it happens, but very rarely, and you cannot rely on it. So at one point, being a little bit frustrated about the industry, so to speak, I decided to just start my own thing. So I wrote up the story and tried to make my vision come true. And sometimes you're very far away from it and you stop believing in it. Well, never really happened to me on an extreme basis. I never had a crisis or anything. I just was concerned that people maybe do not understand what I'm trying to say with what I'm doing. But ultimately, sometimes I even dream of this movie being already finished, and I see all these scenes in my head. And this is an impression I really would like to share, because I think it's a style that hasn't been done before in this magnitude. So yeah, hopefully I can make it a reality. This guy I'm painting, he's supposed to be an older guy. Right now he's a little bit too young, but he has to have an aura of knowledge and mystique about him. He knows something other people don't know, and he also seems trustworthy, but also worn out, like he has experienced and seen a lot. And since this world is very gritty and highly radioactive in parts, I want to make his face also very worn out, and all these, how do you say, not drapery, I don't know how it's called in English, all the ridges in his face, all the marks of the weather and radiation and the sun and the dust and everything. And the cool thing about it is, artistically speaking, when you have a lot of scratches or little details on the surface that is organic or round, you can indicate the geometry way better than with values alone. So it definitely helps to emphasize the the details and the facial structure. Like all the scars above his lip. This one is, you know, bent, so you see that the lip is not straight but slightly bent. And yeah, it's always cool to add scratches and details on top of a surface to indicate the orientation. I find it way harder to paint a soft face, because you have to be very precise, since you can't use that many details on this face. Maybe pores or something like this, and align the pores in a specific direction so you can see the angle of the skin. Yeah, but here you can smash as many details onto his face as you want. It serves the purpose. What's also interesting from a compositional point of view is to play with areas with high degree of detail and areas with a low degree of detail. Right now it's all, I slapped a lot of texture into this image just to have some grit, so that it doesn't look boring. But in the end I will probably erase most of the texture and focus the eye on the face, on the area with the most detail. And especially in movie, because this is one scene of many, you have a little bit more options to play with details and the lack thereof. For various reasons. I mean, this image you will see it for 1-2 seconds or something, and then you have the next image, and you have basically this 4-dimensional axis that you have to take into consideration when you set up a scene. It's not exactly the same as if you would paint an image for, I don't know, a museum or an illustration, which you can take a look at it as long as you want and study all the detail, but in this case you're restricted time-wise, so to speak. And this is something I try to learn as well as I go along. What's also funny and what I really like to talk about is the brushes I use, because some beginning artists always ask, what kind of brushes do you use? And is there a magic brush? And yes, there is one. Sort of. At least for me. The point is, it's always a question of how you use the tools you have. You could paint this very same picture with a 1-pixel brush if you know the basics, how light works, how to set up a scene, and so on and so forth, but it will take years, of course. And I use a tool. It's not a brush, it's a smudge tool, like you can see here. And the amazing thing about it creates a gradient, and in reality you have gradients everywhere. The way how light interacts with objects is always leaves a gradient behind, basically. And it has to do with physics and with the surface area that is being lit and with the distance from the light source to the area. But to sum it up, everywhere are gradients, and when you have a tool that creates gradients, you basically save heaps of time when you're painting, because it basically creates these gradients for you. But of course you can only make proper use of this tool if you know that light works this way and in which direction which gradient has to go. So when you see me smudging around, I just try to indicate the direction of the light, basically. And for some reason I really prefer painting with colors and surfaces and not with line art, because line art for me is interesting for several tasks, but for my approach, it's the information inside of line art is not the one I'm looking for. I'm usually looking for atmosphere, and line art provides you very detailed information if you want to give this image to a 3D artist or something like that. But it doesn't help me to create an atmosphere or a light direction or something like this. It's basically just an abstraction of where the border of two surfaces is. Hope it makes sense. Another thing that I really like to emphasize that I don't see many artists talking about is embracing mistakes, because I do so many mistakes when I paint, and it's normal and it's good and it's healthy, and everyone who says different things is not a wise person. I mean, basically, I try to figure out what I don't want to see in this image, and by making mistakes I can rule out all the variations that I don't like to see. Another thought that crosses my mind is there is no universal approach to things. I mean, this is something that is, how should I say, that works for art, music, as well as life and everything else. You have to adjust your techniques to the individual situation, and I'm searching for an animation technique for characters, but I think that it will depend on the scene. Well, because with this scene, I know that there won't be that much movement. The head will tilt a little bit, you know, but not as much. He won't make a 360-degree turn or something like that. So the movement is limited on purpose also, and I don't need a full 3D model for that. But there are other situations where someone is going along a hallway and you see the whole body, so you won't probably need detailed facial animations and a detailed facial rig, but a good body rig, something that emphasizes the cloths they are wearing, because they're also dynamic, and all these kind of things. So probably it's not like games where you have one character for most of the movement, but it's very individual, which is good. I actually like it that way. Make very individualized troubleshooting style solutions for your problems. There's something off in this image, and I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it has to be the light. It throws off the values a little bit. It's so funny because when you paint and you have this gut feeling that something is off, but you don't really know what it is, and you try to cramp in details to save the image, because the first intention would be to say, yeah, it's a lack of details, it's too rough, but it doesn't get better and you get more nervous, then you know it's something in the basics. It's, yeah, something wrong with the lighting usually, or aka the values. Something is too bright, or the contrast is too high, doesn't correspond with the other elements. I mean, I'm focused on the face here, haven't really touched upon his clothes, and yeah. Take care of that at some point. better earlier than later, otherwise you will screw up the image beyond repair, or you get so annoyed by it that you don't you lose interest in working on this image. The first and biggest factor that usually creates this feeling of unease and dissatisfaction with your image is usually that, yeah, as I said, the values are off. So I try to fix it by taking a smooth brush and adding more gradients on top of it and smoothing it down a little bit and giving the light a more clearer direction. Oops. Because I think the problem is it's just too bright at certain spots. The highlights are overpronounced. Yeah. Yeah, this looks a little bit clearer. It relaxes the eye. Not bad. Soft brush usually works very well when you paint faces, because the skin has a lot of subsurface scattering. It diffuses the light. Yes, is right. Yes, diffuse. It scatters it basically under the skin, so you don't have too many sharp things going on the surface. A lot of soft geometry. So it helps to blend it in a little bit. I mean, I like to keep all these hand-painted strokes, and if you overuse the soft brush tool, it will look a little bit too digital, of course. Yeah, but I like the direction. It gives me a little bit more satisfaction. And in this case, I really like the double lighting from the corners, basically, of the image. So his chin gets accentuated when the light falls down. It's an interesting way of lighting a face. I think I've never tried to paint a face in this kind of lighting, but I would like to use it in this way. and he has this wrinkles at his mouth, so you can basically accentuate them as well, give it quite a bit of geometry when you place the highlights and the light reflections on the right side. I mean, eventually this whole thing will be in color at some point, or the approved iteration of this scene, but for now it's black and white, and I think it's also interesting because it looks like something from an indeterminate time era. You can't really locate where it took place, somewhere in the 70s or 80s. You know, black and white film was available. You know, he has this welder goggles on. So it might even be earlier than that. It's a little bit timeless, which I like this feeling. Highlights. I mean, it's mocked up, it's a mocked up image, so at some point I have to apply the light source and everything else, the clothes and the goggles properly, so it's consistent. And right now I'm too much focused on the face, so I hope I can, you know, get a good grasp on where the light is coming from and how it interacts with the objects, so I can eventually put it on everything else with authority, with ease. I mean, the artist amongst you probably know that how hard it can be if you smudge around and you're not really sure what you're doing and where this is heading. For the younger artists amongst you, don't rush yourself. You know, take your time. Especially, don't try to paint a picture within a day. I know you might have seen it on some kind of speed painting videos or whatever, people being extremely fast with what they're doing. You know, don't compare yourself to them. Take your time. If it's something you're working on it that is really new to you, a topic or how should I say, design language that is new and you are not very routined, you know, paint it over a course of several days. Each day maybe 1 hour or something, or you know, how much you like. It's supposed to be fun, and I often realize that over the course of several days you get way better results than when you force yourself to paint like 4 or 8 hours on one image, because usually you just smudge around and nothing comes out of it, and you think you have worked, but it was not an efficient use of the time. But when you let your mind sleep over it for, you know, a night or several hours, you can come up with new angles, new ideas with a fresh eye, and then the process is also way faster afterwards. And one of the most important things is reference material. You know, don't force yourself to get everything out of your head. This is also very ineffective. I mean, some artists can do this. They can paint photorealistic faces out of their head, but they haven't been doing anything else. They're highly specialized, and when you ask them to do an environmental painting, they usually screw up. And it depends what you want. For me personally, versatility is more important than specialization. Yes, I do specialize in some kind of way, but on a specific topic, on a specific world. But I have to paint so many different things: environments, faces, props. I have to animate, I have to make the story and write the music and so on and so forth. So I don't have the luxury and not the obsession to stick to, you know, one very specific topic. So, you know, pick your pie, so to speak. Pick the ingredients to your pie. If you want to be the best facial designer or face painter in the world, well, yeah, okay, then just paint faces when this interests you. But most of the time it's advantageous to be a little bit more versatile than this. Depends where your interests are, of course. Oops. Weird ambient music in the background. Yeah, I have to skip this. Too much blabbering. Oh. Alright. just thinking, if the light comes from behind this person, he probably will have a very strong shadow along this line. Oops. I have to see if it works how I intend it to work. 0 pixels. Nah. Sharp, strong shadows also help a lot to indicate light and geometry. You know, the edge, the border of the shadow is also a very helpful tool sometimes. Here, yeah. I mean, it looks like the face interacts more with the cloth, and I think I'm gonna keep it and do the same here, but I still want to have a little bit light on his mouth to highlight all the details, so I have to figure out a way to fade it out at the proper, you know, at the proper point, something like this. It's not perfect, but it looks better than before. He gets, how do you call it, embraced by his collar. I hope I'm using the right English words. Oops. Yeah, but look, this looks better. I like it. Oh, hey, just painting. Frizzelt. Was für ein Rapperface? Innenlippe. Innere Innenlippe. Ah, okay, ja. Also hier oben gebe ich dir recht, das verschwimmt auf jeden Fall. Das stimmt. Da muss ich noch was machen. Ja, diese Interaktion zwischen den Gegenständen und dem Gesicht, da bin ich auch noch nicht so richtig happy mit. Ich habe auch keine gute Referenzmaterial dafür gefunden. Ups. Gonna switch back to English. I haven't found a good picture of someone wearing this kind of goggles with this kind of lighting, so I have to, and at some points I'm a little bit unsure how the light would interact. To be honest. So the excuse is I'm going for the atmosphere, not academic, how should I say, correctness. But yeah, to figure these points out at some point in the drawing process. Oops. I mean, sometimes there are situations where I really like when something disappears into a shadow and you cannot really make out the line where it starts and ends. It's an interesting tool to play with, but yeah, at some points it's just unclear for the eye. So yeah, and there's still a lot of line art in here which I have to erase because this kind of, you know, is inconsistent with my style. Thanks for the feedback. some reason it reminds me of some kind of Second World War poster, like, yeah, get your shit together, we have to fight the Axis forces, you know, industry workers unite, with this weird fancy goggles. It's probably a little bit too low tech for what I'm aiming at, but once again, just a tech test with unfinished designs. And just for some more context, the thing is, I want to figure out how this hand-painted look can be animated for this specific scene, and I'm a little bit nervous on spending too much time if the pipeline doesn't work out. So, because since so many things are still unclear, like what's the background supposed to be, and this is not his final phase, and you know, nothing of his clothing has been properly designed yet. This is something I have to tackle at some point. I mean, there are a few iterations, there are a few approaches, but nothing final yet. Yeah, thank you very much. Just painting. By the way, if you could do me a favor, and if you're still watching, could you type something in the Twitch chat? I want to see if it's... I have a weird setup, and I want to see if the message gets forwarded to another chat room which summarizes every chat from YouTube and Twitch and other channels. Right, cool, it got forwarded. Thank you very much. If you decide to stream again one day, let me help you out with setting up iStream, because it's really cool. You can stream on several channels at once, and apparently you can receive the chat's messages from every channel, whoops, in one in one window, which is very convenient. So yeah, if you like to spread your artworks in the net, let me know. The only thing is, I think I cannot respond. No, I cannot. At least not Britain, but you know, you hear my voice, so it's probably sufficient. Thinking how to proceed. Oops. Fuck. In my opinion, once you start figuring out how the light is supposed to be, you get a little bit more braver with your strokes, or at least I do, to clarify the light sources a little bit more to make it easier readable for the eye. And I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable with that, I think, for this one. Well, once again, it's an iterative process. It's not always is the lighting of your image clear from the beginning, especially when you mock it up with so many different with so many different materials. A little bit overboard. Ja, ich habe dich angesprochen. Du bist der Einzige gerade. Genau. Du bist sowieso der Einzige, der gerade online ist, also alles gut. So yeah, figuring out the lighting is, I would say, it's the most vital part of your image. And this is why I said earlier, good reference material is key, because if you find an image with interesting lighting, you can basically copy that or adapt it to your image, and you have a good guideline. But yeah, if it's super experimental, if you have super many things with super different lightings, you know, like this goggles, for instance, I just picked a random image from the internet and I haven't really iterated the design, and there are so many things you have to take into consideration, so it might have been a little bit too much for this image, you know. Usually for a proper approach you would divide and conquer. You would make a facial design, you would make a, you know, a cloth design, a character design, an environmental design separately, as easy as possible, you know. Not too much lighting, not too much perspective, just focus on the design, and then you can smash everything together once you get a good grasp on the subject matter. But I haven't really done this. I've just skipped all these steps and decided to just paint straight out of my head, out of the imagination for the most part. And yeah, there are some points you will feel when you get stuck or when you're lacking information. Then you have to go back to the drawing board or search for other reference material and so on and so forth. So at some point it becomes really time consuming, which is the conclusion. But then again, if you're a somewhat routine artist, you will find ways to hide the spots you're not really sure about. Oops. Yeah, starts to look interesting. Ja, das stimmt. The one... yeah. The one person watching on stream beside you, just painting, is my Restream bot. It's... or is it? But you're right. I actually like this, you know, focused look on his forehead, and I think I'm gonna accentuate it. So this, I agree with you on this point. It gives the face a little bit more expression. I'm not sure what to do with the mouth. Might experiment with it a little bit. I mean, my first intention was... Ah yeah, no, there is no one watching aside from you just painting. It's just my Restream IO bot and me. So this makes 3 people in this channel. The point is, I wanted this to be a character that is very trustworthy, and he has like a smug look on his face. So he looks like he knows something other people don't. And he's a little bit above everyone else. And I wanted to make him look a little bit more friendly, but to be honest, I kind of agree with you here. Since this is a test anyway, and I haven't really finished a proper character design, I can modify it to look a little... how should I say? To make it more consistent with the look of the image. So, yeah, a gritty guy that has a bad mood or something like this. Okay, let's see. Filter. Okay, fine. What? Alright. Who cares? Not sure if this is good or not. Looks a little bit goofy. Can also smile a little bit. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is something I'm satisfied with. Okay, let's try this again. Yeah, it's alright. I want him to have a little bit more, a little bit thinner lips. So he looks like a guy who really works and wields. Yeah, this was alright. He has approximately the same mood as I have, so yeah. So I just read your comments. Yeah, I think our thoughts have been along the same line, so yeah. The Liquify tool is so powerful if you paint faces and you need a very precise modification without screwing too much around with the picture. Really helpful, at least for me. I like to implement it into the workflow. About the question if I want to use make the mantle texturated or make it completely by hand. I don't know yet, because I haven't even really figured out the design as a whole, and I'm not satisfied with how the light falls, so I have to figure out the light first, and then I probably will slap on some texture here and there, but this this at a later stage, I think. The mantle. Is it even an English word? The coat. I think mantle is something else in English. In German, mantle is coat. Oh, never mind. You know, I need a fourth screen with a dictionary so I can check if the words I'm using are even correct or not. I really like this part here with the chin and the mouth. It really looks very plastic. Not plastic in terms of artificial, but very geometrical, very, yeah. Just starts to work here at this area. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah. I just been informed that mantle in English has something to do with chimneys. And no, this is not. Well, it's sort of a chimney. I mean, this area here looks like a chimney, but no. Coat. With his coat. With his jacket. Ah, hair shading. Yeah, you're right. Well, I really haven't thought about this because I haven't considered it to be a concern. Usually hair is something, one of the latter things that I do, or the last things I do. And for me personally, it's, I don't know, I don't put so much emphasis on it, and I don't consider it to be difficult. So, but yeah, this will be part of the process anyway. I'm just more concerned with the coat. And I'll probably stream for 20 more minutes and then I'm shutting this off because I'm already getting a little bit exhausted. It's like streamed more than 2 hours today, so you know what? I'm gonna accelerate this process because it's just too tedious for me to paint it all by hand. I need a little bit more, you know, how should I say, a grip on this image. even if it's low resolution, but this doesn't matter because I will smudge it anyway. I just, you know, need some orientation and some guidance. Let's see. I mean, this is quite dark, but it kind of looks cool. Highlight, overlay. I'm not sure. Doesn't look bad, but it's also not hyper super duper inspiring. Maybe I make it a little bit more accessible. Oops. Yeah, I agree with you. I also like the fact that it pushes the face, but it's a little bit too dark overall. Yeah, a compromise works. This compromise works. Ja, zugefallen. Maybe make it a little bit more narrower. Still extremely dark, but we'll see. Maybe I can fix it somehow. I mean, sometimes you get happy accidents, which I really like this one here. I have this weird idea in my head that he has a light source coming from the light of his face, and it drops a very hard shadow on his chin, but it still gets bounced off at the edge of his, I don't know how it's called, collar in the front here. So you see it a little bit and you know where the border is, and it creates some interesting, you know, aspect to the image, consistent with the light source. So but it's still way too dark. Oopsie. So yeah, just for FYI, for your information, this stream will be visible on YouTube because I don't know, I haven't made it a habit to save them on Twitch. Because I really like to listen to some music in the background, and I'm afraid that that they will ban me if I save these videos with you know, the hint of copyrighted music in the background. I mean, it's funny, I've been trying to figure out what kind of music you can use, and there are some channels that play royalty-free, license-free music, but man, this is music I don't want to hear on my channel. It's not my taste, really. Some kind of EDM stuff and easy listening stuff, and no, sorry, it doesn't work. And I really like to listen to my dark stuff, but some channels have this policy to, they just say, choose your own music. You know, all you hear is the artist talking, if at all, and everyone can hear their own music, which I find to be a very acceptable compromise. Shit. Oh, okay, it's set on difference. Oh, this looks nice. Yeah, at some point you get to the stage, or at least I get to the stage in my workflow where I have to use smaller and smaller reference bits or photo bashing bits for very specific areas of the image. And when you're at this stage, you know, you're not far away from the finishing line, so you can relax a little bit more. A little bit more relaxing here. I'm Arnold. Sorry. Just goofing around. Ah, okay. I have music in the background, but I think it's so quiet that probably you can't hear it, which is good. Yeah, you're right. At some point I want to make a little bit better campaign with this whole stream stuff, so all the channels are interlinked. They have links, you know, to the Patreon site, to the Twitch, to the YouTube channel, and so yeah, they're cross-linked, and I want to announce my streams also on Facebook and Twitch. Not Twitch. Yeah, announce them basically as an event on Instagram, for instance. But for this I need a better schedule, and yeah, it's so much marketing work. I mean, it's fun, but sometimes I'm afraid if my brain is big enough to handle all this stuff, you know. But thank you very much for the hint, for the suggestion. I don't know. Initially, I wanted to make it a little bit more techy than it is now. You know, more cyberpunky, but cyberpunky. Yeah, but since I don't have a good grasp on the tech stuff as of yet, I decided to make it a little bit more cloth-based. And which corresponds with the very, very first approaches I had to this, you know, movie, because I wanted the coats to be really thick and really simple and authentic, but you run into the problem that they look boring at some point. You know, they're so functional that they just look boring, and I couldn't find this right balance between entertaining, interesting, functional, aesthetic, but also kind of realistic. And I don't want to fall into cyberpunk cliches. You know, there are some shapes that are, I don't want to say overused, but I don't know, it just doesn't have this originality anymore if you use them too much. To your comment, I'm just too lazy to convert the images into black and white, and for this reason I'm painting in grayscale, but it doesn't save any color information, so if I revert it to RGB it's still black and white, if it answers your question. Mary Kay. What was your idea? So you see the stuff in black and white, but you still pick the colors? I'm not aware of a mode that works like that, to be honest. Except, let me think. So RGB. Yeah, right. Okay, I have red here, and I have, I don't know, some green here. I mean, you probably know this trick. If you want to switch your image to black and white in a matter of seconds, you can make another layer and put it on, what was it? I think saturation. And if you just want to check the values, you can just click, you know, enable the layer or deactivate it. But if you paint in black and white and you pick he picks whatever is on top of everything else. And I'm not sure if there is a function to actually pick the colors underneath this layer. Maybe, yeah, sample all layers, current and below current layer, current and below all layers, current and below. No, that doesn't work. No, apparently there is no option. If there would be an option to just pick everything below this layer, then I think we would have a technique which you're looking for. All layers. No, sorry. Doesn't work. Ja, hätte klappen können. Yeah. Might have been an interesting technique indeed to, you know, create happy color accidents, but I probably couldn't use it because I need to see the colors and how they blend together instantaneously. Otherwise I lose too much control, but you know, everyone has different techniques. And it's never wrong to experiment. Never. Alright, what do we put on the left side? What's wrong with your image? If you like to tell me. Yeah, I know this reference image is hilarious, but I actually love it because she wears this kind of plastic bag and it creates really interesting drapery. Voila. If I can make use of it, actually. Not sure if this works. And the music is way too happy. I have to skip it a little bit. Ah, yeah. Okay, for everyone, no, it's not Unken. I think, I don't know, I haven't seen the picture, so, but I assume if you have so many layers that are not merged, it's so difficult to keep control. And you know that I usually try to paint on as few layers as possible because then I have more control over the blending. There is one thing that really helps me if the color temperature is completely off, and it's but in order to do this you probably will have to merge them together. If not, you have to go layer by layer and apply this tool to it. It's called photo filter. It shifts the colors into a different color that you adjust here. I usually say I want to be everything shifted a little bit more into orange, and it does it in a very natural way. And I really like this tool, so maybe you can apply it to every layer and it gets more homogeneous. Maybe, as a tip. I don't know if it helps. Oops. Yeah, I personally, I don't know how people can work with layers. I mean, I've used to work with many layers, but I constantly lost control and forgotten which layer I'm painting on, and yeah, it was really too much. And you know, we talked about this quite often, that I shifted my approach to a more, you know, traditional canvas style mixing of colors. Okay, I see that I'm just slapping the values around and I don't have any idea for his left shoulder. Thank you very much. But I will take care of it in the next stream. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for sticking around, just painting, and yeah, we will continue talking on WhatsApp. Bye.